Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome, in most cases, back to Labor and Commerce Sub 3. You all know the rules. We're getting short of time. If Marcus Simon were here, he'd have a speech he'd give. And at some great peril to life and limb, mine and some people in this room, I have begged Madam Chair to let us rearrange our schedule a little bit to accommodate some people. But I cannot emphasize enough that we got to get these bills done. I'm told there are bills not even in the subcommittee yet that are headed our way. So we're sort of shooting at a moving target in terms of trying to manage what will be 2 more meetings of this subcommittee on Thursday and next Tuesday. So while we're going to move some bills back, the ability to do that in the future is really limited to non-existent. So having said that, some administrative matters. At the request of the patron, we're going to strike HB 1999. Do I have a motion? So moved. Is there a motion properly second to strike HB 1999? Mr. Clerk, would you put the vote up on the board?
It's spinning. I'm sorry, sir. There she is.
Please close the roll. That motion passes 10-0. On today's docket, after much pleading and begging, we are taking the following bills by for the day. Yes. You think this is helpful, but you won't think that on Thursday. Delegate Williams, HB 1588 is by for the day. Delegate Fagan, 1616 is by for the day. Delegate Bloxham, 1875, we already did that in full committee. That's by for the day.
Mr. Chair.
Who do I hear? Delegate Williams.
Yeah, did I hear that you were going by 1588 today?
Yes, sir.
Thanks for letting me know.
I thought you and Delegate Shin were in conversations.
No, I'd like to go forward today.
Well, Delegate Williams, we're taking HB 1588 by for the day. And 2087, Shin. So if we can handle those in a block, do I have a motion on those 4 bills? Second. Moved properly second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Nay. The ayes have it. Those bills will go by for the day. Delegate Reed. Why don't we start with Delegate Reed? HB 1821.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the subcommittee, before you, you have 2 bills that are HB 1821 and 1822, and I believe that the attorney has already published the substitute.
Is there a motion on substitute? Is there a motion on substitute? Is there a second? Substitutes before us. All in favor of accepting the substitute, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Substitutes before us. Delegate Reed, do you want to tell us about your substitute and then your bill?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The substitute really, the original bill was much more expansive, and this is really trying to target the JLARC data center recommendation number 3. And both of these bills are really kind of interrelated. This one really talks specifically about generation, and it started out much more expansive and then worked through the process, and I believe that we now have agreement and peace in the valley on this. There was recommendation 3 in the JLARC report that had suggested that the General Assembly expand the Accelerated and Renewable Buyers Program to also include battery storage. We currently allow for solar and wind, but the intent is to be able to include battery storage in that program so that as we continue to use more energy generation from solar and wind, that we'll be able to use the battery storage to be able to smooth out the use of that energy. And so, Mr. Chair, that is what the substitute does, and it has been narrowed in scope because Also in the JLARC recommendation, they had said perhaps at some point in time, we could include hydrogen and some other items. It was decided that during the short session, it was probably best to just stick to the very specific parts of the JLARC recommendation, narrow it down to battery storage, and that's how we have agreed to proceed.
Thank you, Delegate Reed. Are there any questions from members of the panel for Delegate Reed? Seeing none, let's go to the audience. Is anyone, I'm sorry, Delegate O'Quinn.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. I think I have a question for the patron, but it could be the commission. I'm looking at I think the substitute that we just drafted, which is the last three lines, 427 through 429, which I guess is section 3 of that final enactment on the, yes, that the distribution and transmission costs associated are justly and reasonably allocated. I think I know what that means, but can you explain to the subcommittee?
Yes, Mr. Chair. The intent behind that is, again, if you go to the JLARC study at this particular point in time, what they have identified is that the current cost allocation across commercial, residential, data centers, and everything is allocated appropriately. There is a concern, and that is identified in the report, that going forward, that could get out of balance. And so what the intent here is to direct that the State Corporation Commission will make sure that those are continue to be justly and reasonably allocated across the different user bases.
Further question, Mr. Chairman.
Delegate O'Quinn.
Mr. Chairman, has there been, and I know it doesn't come with a fist, but has there been an estimate of the distribution and transmission costs associated with it?
Mr. Chairman, with this particular piece of legislation, there has not been an estimate on that because, again, this is adding adding battery storage to what we already have in the existing code. So again, like I said, so that we can smooth out the energy production and generation from solar and wind to the actual usage that occurs 24/7.
Any other questions for Delegate Reed from members of the panel? Is there anyone in the audience here to testify in favor of HB 1821?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Chrissy Noonan with Seven Hills Strategy Group on behalf of Dominion Energy. We appreciate very much the patron working with us and addressing our concerns. I'm reviewing the substitute on my phone, and to the extent that this pulls down the language from the JLARC recommendation, which I think it does, we would be in support of it and thankful to the patron. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, members of the subcommittee, Josephus Allman with the Southern Environmental Law Center. We support this bill because it allows accelerated renewable energy buyers more flexibility in the resources that they can purchase. And that directive regarding transmission and distribution costs help make sure those costs of any of these projects from accelerated renewable buyers are also justly allocated. Thanks to the patron for his leadership on this.
Mr. Chair, members of the subcommittee, Matt Mansell from Broad Street Group on behalf of Virginia LCV, we support this legislation.
Mr. Chair, members of the subcommittee, Lillian Anderson with Virginia Conservation Network. We also support this bill as it would open up options for large energy users to invest in some clean energy technologies on their own dime and protect ratepayers from those costs. And we thank the patron for bringing it forward.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone in the audience here to testify against HB 1821? Any further discussion from members of the panel or questions for Delegate Reed? Delegate Reed, you have the last word.
I'm fine, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair,
Delegate Lopez.
have you had any conversations with the administration about this bill?
Mr. Chair, no, I have not.
Have they talked to you at all about the reference to the Clean Economy Act in this bill?
Mr. Chair, I've not had any discussions at all with the administration on this bill or any discussions with them on the Virginia Clean Economy Act.
All right. Well, that's an interesting question. Is the administration in the room? Does the administration have a position on this bill? Okay.
Oh, they're coming.
Oh, here we go.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Julianne Cyper, Department of Energy. We do not have a position on the bill. We did not have a chance to review the substitute. So
Did
no
you have a position on the earlier version of the bill?
We did not have a stated position, no.
All right, committee acts on motion.
Was,
We have a motion to report the substitute, right?
Report the substitute.
The motion to report the substitute properly second. Clerk will please open the roll. Everyone voted who wants to vote. The substitute reports by vote is 6-4. Thank you, Delegate Reed. Delegate Reed, you have the next bill as well, 1822.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is House Bill 1822, which addresses advanced conductor material, and there is also a substitute for this piece of legislation.
Is there a motion on the substitute? Is there a second? All right. All in favor of accepting the substitute, say aye. Any opposed? Substitute's before us. Delegate Reed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, as we talk about this, in the previous piece of legislation, we were really talking about generation and battery storage, and in this particular part of the legislation that we have here, we're talking about transmission. For those of you who are not familiar with what ACM, advanced conductor materials, are, these are technologies that allow for the transmission of more electricity along a same exact pathway that you have now. So if you perhaps have a 500 kilovolt line that is using existing technology, at some point in the future, you would possibly be able to upgrade that to using an ACM technology, which would then allow you to put down 625 kilovolts or 750 kilovolts down the same line. This prevents the need for being able to have additional right-of-ways taken away. It allows to be able to maximize the use of the hardware and the infrastructure that is already in place. And this becomes another tool in the toolbox for us to be able to address increasing energy needs for not only the data center area in Northern Virginia, but also across the entire Commonwealth. One of the things that I think is important here is that as we have moved forward, and again, this is another piece of legislation where we started out with something that was much more broad in scope, and then we have narrowed it down into something that I believe we have agreement on a way to move forward with. So first of all, in the sections in lines 12 through 16, you'll see that it has some definitions about advanced conductors, and then the last dependent clause says, and any similar technologies. The reason why that was put in there is because we don't want to be holding ourselves to whatever the technologies are today, because those technologies could change in the future. And then I think one of the other things is that we have collectively made a decision that we want to be sure that we're empowering the State Corporation Commission to do their job fully. And so what we've done is in the last part of this legislation, it would direct the State Corporation Commission to consider the prudency of using advanced conductors as opposed to mandating and requiring that it be used in specific cases. So I think this maintains the intent of the General Assembly with being able to empower the State Corporation Commission and provide them with other alternatives.
Thank you, Delegate. Delegate Herring, you have a question?
Yes, thank you so much. Just curious on the delayed enactment on line 31, January 1st, 2026. Why is that?
Yes, Mr. Chair. The delayed enactment was intended to allow a little bit of time for us to be able, and for the State Corporation Commission to be able to kind of digest this information and be able to look at the different advanced conducting material capabilities that are available. Because again, this is something that is really very highly technical, and there are different technologies out there. So we believe that this allows them to be able to build up that knowledge base to then be able to look at it in that prudent fashion.
Are there any other questions for Delegate Reed from members of the panel? Is there anyone in the audience here who wants to testify in favor of the legislation?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Chrissy Noonan, Seven Hills Strategy Group on behalf of Dominion Energy. We support the bill and appreciate the patron working with us to address our concerns. Importantly, we appreciate the language in the second enactment that would give the commission the discretion to determine the prudency of these advanced conductors in proceedings where they would already be thinking about transmission and what would be a good use. So we would ask that you support the bill. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the subcommittee, Abigail Thompson with Gentry Lock on behalf of Advanced Energy United, and we support this bill. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the subcommittee, Josephus Allman with the Southern Environmental Law Center, and we support this bill.
Mr. Chair, members of the subcommittee, Matt Mansell from Broad Street Group on behalf of Virginia LCV, we support this bill.
Is there anyone in the audience here to testify against the bill? Seeing none. Delegate Lopez?
No, I just have issues with Gentry Lock.
Any further questions for Delegate Reed? Comments from the panel? Delegate Reed, do you need the last
No
word?
further remarks from me, sir.
All right. You all know the next step.
Move to report.
Substitute. Move to report the substitute.
It's properly moved and seconded to report the substitute. Clerk, Mr. Clerk, please open the roll. Does everyone vote who wants to vote? Delegate Shin, do you want to vote?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Clerk, you can close the roll. The bill reports with a substitute 8-2.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members of the subcommittee.
Thank you, Delegate Reed. Delegate LaVere Bowling?
All right.
Hold on just one second.
Committee chair.
Delegate LaVere Bowling.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the subcommittee. Before you today is House Bill 1934, which aims to expand solar energy adoption in Virginia's public schools. With over 1,800 K through 12 school buildings statewide, only 8% currently utilize solar power despite its significant cost-saving and educational benefits. This legislation amends the Virginia Clean Economy Act to prioritize schools within the distributed solar generation carve-out of the renewable portfolio standard, making solar adoption for schools more accessible. Solar energy offers substantial benefits for schools. It can reduce electricity bills by approximately 25%. Solar arrays are durable, low maintenance, and can serve as resiliency hubs during emergencies. Additionally, integrating solar systems into curricula can enhance STEM education and inspire students to embrace renewable energy solutions. This legislation makes a modest but impactful adjustment to the RPS. Currently, 1% of renewable energy certificates must come from distributed generation projects, with 25% prioritized for low-income projects. If insufficient low-income projects are available to meet the 25%, this bill ensures schools would be next in line. This change will ensure that schools have a market to sell their RECs, which lowers financial barriers and enables more schools to adopt solar. The goal is to save taxpayer dollars while contributing to Virginia's clean energy goals. I ask that the committee please support this bill to create a brighter, more sustainable future for Virginia's schools and communities. And I do, Mr. Chair, have experts here in the event that anyone has questions that I cannot answer.
Great, thank you, Delegate. Any questions for Delegate LaVere Bowling from members of the panel? Okay, is there anyone here to testify in favor of this bill?
Mr. Chairman and members of the subcommittee, Trias Lockwood representing Madison Energy Infrastructure. We thank the delegate for bringing this bill. We think it'll help open up the doors for more solar on schools. It's very narrow. It does two things. First, it introduces a K-12 public schools definition. And then second, it updates the code in the distributed generation carve-out, saying that of the 1%, 25% goes to low-income qualifying projects. And if those aren't available, then the utility can comply with solar school projects. So we appreciate this. We think it'll incentivize the rec market and help for more schools to go solar across the Commonwealth. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the subcommittee, Wes Gibson with the Virginia Education Association. Our committee has entered a position of support for this bill. We think that this bill opens up numerous opportunities for our educators to not only reduce energy costs, but also serve as an ability for our educators to train on STEM and other areas by having these projects close to our primary and secondary buildings. We also strongly believe that by modernizing our infrastructure to include some of these projects near our school sites, this will allow us to free up some of the money that we might be able to use to solve other pressing issues like the teacher shortage. We thank the patron for bringing this very important bill, and we urge the body to vote in favor of the bill. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the subcommittee, Matt Mansell, on behalf of Virginia LCV, we support this legislation.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Bob Shippey with Sierra Club. Schools are a great place for solar. Really heartily support the bill and thank the patron.
Mr. Chair, members of the subcommittee, Josephus Allman with the Southern Environmental Law Center. We thank the patron for bringing this bill. There's been a number of hurdles to school projects lately, and this could be a really important step in getting at that. So thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Chrissy Noonan on behalf of Dominion Energy, and we support the bill. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Kyle Shreve on behalf of the Virginia Forestry Association. We support the bill and thank the delegate for prioritizing solar on schools. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Victoria Higgins, Chesapeake Climate Action Network Action Fund. We support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you all. Is there anyone here to testify in opposition to this bill? Seeing none, is there anyone online, Mr. Clerk?
No, sir.
Any further discussion or questions for the patron from members of the committee? Delegate, you want the last word?
Let's vote.
Or good last words? Good last words.
Chair, does it need to go to appropriations?
Not that anyone's told me.
There's no fifth.
Oh, okay, because there was a fifth. Okay. All right. I just want to make sure.
No.
Because I want to mess up, because I saw a fizz on it. All right. All right. Mr. Chair, I move that we report this bill.
Second.
Mr. Chair,
Delegate Gilbert.
just want to follow up on what the majority leader said. So it may not be on a list, but if it's got a fiscal impact, doesn't it need to go to appropriations?
Mr. Chair,
Delegate Chin?
unless I'm reading this incorrectly, doesn't it say that the fiscal impact estimate is indeterminate? Oh, sorry, maybe not. That's not what I'm looking at. I'm sorry.
I am. Okay, Mr. Chair, this is my concern, is that we have deadlines coming up for it to get to full, and our deadline for this committee is January 30th.
Correct.
I'd rather be safe and have it as a report and refer, and then we can change it in full committee if we find out. We can speak to the chair of approps, and if it doesn't need to go, we can change the motion in full committee to just report out. I just want to be careful that we're not going to mess up a deadline and miss passing a good bill.
It's your motion. Delegate, by the way, do you have a budget amendment in for the bill?
No.
All right, so the motion, Delegate O'Quinn.
No, Mr. Chair, I was just going to say, in fairness, as it relates to the budget amendment, I think appropriations had said in their admonishment to us to keep our amendments to the bare minimum, that they would try to work with bills that had a fist that weren't overbearing, which I don't think this will be considered overbearing.
I agree. Thank you for that. I was just curious more than anything else.
Thank you.
So what's your motion, Delegate Herring?
Just to be safe, I don't want to lose this bill, so I would say my motion is to report and refer to appropriations.
Second.
There's a motion to refer the bill and refer it to appropriations. Second. Properly moved and seconded. Mr. Clerk, please open the roll. Please close the roll. The bill reports and goes to appropriations by a vote of 8-2. Thank you, Delegate. Who do I see? Delegate Keys-Gamarra, you're next. This is HB 2136.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. House Bill 2136 really is a little bit a homegrown problem and some language to try to address it. In my district, which includes a planned community, there have been a number of small utility type supports for communities and that have been long-term and that started at the onset of the development of these communities back in the 60s when it was working until it wasn't. And so what I have found is that there are a number of people within the community who find themselves completely lost trying to figure out what to do. So I had some conversations with SCC, and they offered, oh, sorry, I should have moved the substitute first.
There's a substitute. All right. Do I have a motion on substitute?
Move the substitute.
There's a motion to adopt substitute, properly moved and second. All in favor? Any opposed? Substitute's before us.
Okay, I don't know if you have copies, but I have extra just in case.
They should be available online. Substitute's available online.
Is it? I don't know. I wasn't sure, but thank you. As I was saying, this is an attempt to try to just provide resources for those that do have questions. This is not designed to replace a person's ability to go to Dominion or existing utilities and their, people calling and getting their questions. But this is just designed to help to resolve questions for those that are in a situation where they typically may not have access to those companies but still need some guidance. So utility customers have increasingly become frustrated in my district that their very questions and concerns have not been able to be addressed by existing mechanisms. And I did have an extensive conversation with SCC regarding how to address this, and this is the language that we came up with. And I do hope that it is the committee's will to report this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Keys-Gamarra. Any questions for the delegate from members of the panel? Is there anyone here in the room to testify in support of HB 2136?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Carmen Bingham with the Virginia Poverty Law Center, and as you may know, we have been operating a utility helpline for utility customers to help answer questions and navigate through both the SCC and the two utilities' customer service. We've been doing this on our own, and the fact that the delegate has brought forth this piece of legislation to create an ombudsman to do the job that we have been volunteeringly doing in order for us to get through this process is very much appreciated, and so we support the bill. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I'm Laura Gonzalez with Clean Virginia, and we support this bill, and we're very thankful for the patron to break this mechanism to support customers.
Thank you. Mr. Murray, get it.
Mr. Chairman, Bill Murray on behalf of Dominion Energy. Back in the 1999 session, the Joint Commission on Healthcare created an ombudsman for the Bureau of Insurance. So here we are 26 years later. So I feel young again, and I'm going to tell on Arlen Bolstad because he drafted the bill back when he worked in legislative services. So glad to see this concept in the utility world.
Thank you, sir. Anyone here to testify in opposition to HB 2136? Seeing none. Any further conversation, discussion, questions from members of the panel? We operate on motion.
Well, Mr. Chair, I have a quick comment.
Delegate Herring.
And I'd like to thank the delegate for bringing the bill. I know when I first started practicing law, there was the Office of People's Counsel in D.C. They were the advocate. They were attorneys, so they had a little different role than this, but this is needed. So I think, and so, Mr. Chair, if it's appropriate for a motion. And again, this is a report and refer. There's a fifth on it too. Okay, I move that we report and refer this.
The substitute.
The substitute.
There has been a motion properly seconded to report the substitute and refer it to appropriations. Mr. Clerk, if you'd open the roll. It's thinking.
You got it.
Please close the roll. The bill reports by a vote of 5 to 4.
Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Keys-Gamarra. Delegate Carlson, nice timing. You're up. This is HB 1883.
Thank you, Chair Sullivan. A little out of breath, jogged here.
Take your time.
What?
Take your time.
So this is a bill. I wrote myself notes, and I'm going to read my simple message, and then I'm going to lose my ability to ad lib, and I'm just going to read my prepared remarks so that I don't mess anything up. The simple message is that this gets more solar to the places that everyone agrees that it should go. I am out of shape, apparently. And so with that, if you don't mind, I'm just going to read out. So House Bill 1883, well, actually, I need to put a substitute in first.
There's a substitute. Is there a motion on the substitute?
Okay.
Properly second that we adopt the substitute. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Substitutes before us. Go ahead, Delegate Carlson.
Yep. So the substitute for the bill that you do have, the substitute reflects some good faith negotiations that we had with Dominion. It makes it so that the distributed carve-out is at 5% in 2028 as opposed to 8%. It also makes it so that the carve-out for projects on previously developed sites lands at 600 megawatts rather than 1,000 megawatts, and it moves the 75% in-state requirement from 2025 to 2027, anticipating a little shortfall that Dominion will have, but then in 2027, it should pick up when wind comes back on. And lastly, it makes a technical change and extends the SUP program through 2032. So that's the nature of the substitute. And then the bill in general, if I can, Chair. Yep. So House Bill 1883 is a bill to increase the amount of solar that we're placing on rooftops and in built environments. In 2020, the Clean Economy Act created a 1% carve-out for distributed solar projects within the Renewable Portfolio Standard, RPS. It also created a carve-out of 200 megawatts for projects on previously developed project sites, brownfields, commercial industrial sites, landfills, parking lots, those types of places. We want more solar on rooftops and on previously developed project sites as we meet our clean energy goals, and that's what this bill does. The bill gradually raises the carve-out for distributed solar projects from 1% to 5% by 2028, and then asks for the SCC to set that carve-out going forward. It also increases the size of a distributed resource from 1 megawatts to 3 megawatts, bringing it in line with the net metering statute. In addition, this bill allows power purchase agreements for all Virginians, providing families and small businesses with additional opportunities for clean energy. It also triples the carve-out on previously developed project sites from 200 megawatts to 600 megawatts. These changes will help reduce impacts to important natural resources by shifting thousands of acres worth of solar development to rooftops and previously disturbed sites. Almost done. The bill also has important protections for ratepayers by allowing more third-party development of distributed projects. Risks to ratepayers are minimized. And in addition, the bill delays the Clean Economies Act's in-state requirement for 2025 to 2027. I mentioned that earlier, which is going to avoid any potential deficiency payments being passed on to ratepayers. It extends the strategic undergrounding program until 2032, and this program has created significant reliability and resilience benefits for the parts of the grids that it has served. With that, I do have Josephus here with Southern Environmental Law Center who can answer technical questions, and I appreciate you all dealing with me as I catch my breath and read my notes.
All right, while she's catching her breath, any members have questions for Delegate Carlson? Delegate Weber.
I'm trying to wrap maybe Josephus could answer the question. I'm trying to wrap my head around some of the numbers in regards to, so the shifting in all the percentages. What is the, again, calculated number of acres of solar and things like that would increase to if we go from 1% to 8%?
Mr. Chair, Delegate Weber, so she
Could
referenced...
you identify yourself, sir, for people watching?
Josephus Allman with the Southern Environmental Law Center. Delegate Weber, she referenced several thousand acres avoided. And so two things to look at there. The previously developed sites, which goes from 200 megawatts to 600 megawatts. So that 400 megawatt difference, if we take the high end estimate for solar, 8 to 10 acres per megawatt, you've got about 4,000 acres there. For the moving from 1% to 5%, and this is sort of a rough approximation, but if you look at the number in the Clean Economy Act, the 16,100 megawatts, 5% of that going onto rooftops is about just under 600 megawatts more than 1% of that going to rooftops. So that, almost 600 megawatts, that's another 5,000 to 6,000 acres, and so that's where the total number of acres is coming from of avoided impacts.
Further question, Mr. Chair?
Delegate Weber.
And then, I guess Delegate Carlson, you'd in the legislation, you mentioned about power purchase agreements with individual homeowners. That's kind of big. How do they make that with a utility? Or is it like community type stuff?
Mr. Chair, Delegate Weber, so currently only low-income Virginians and nonprofits can do a power purchase agreement. By opening it up to all folks regardless of income, you cover some Virginians that might not have a tax liability. So in that case, it's beneficial to finance the system, or if you have the cash, you can do it yourself. The power purchase agreement is just another contractual method for a third-party developer, and the customer just buys the power at whatever's delivered to their house. So we see it as opening up options for Virginia families and then Virginia small businesses because, like I said earlier, it's only available to nonprofits for small systems at the moment.
Sorry, I apologize, Mr. Chair.
Weber.
So the individual homeowner can purchase not necessarily from the utility, but from a third party?
Mr. Chair, Delegate Weber, yes, that's correct.
Okay. One final question, Mr. Chair.
Delegate Weber.
Sorry.
It's okay.
We also mentioned the strategic undergrounding that would be extended. Is that based off of the original strategic undergrounding that we did like 6 or 7 years ago?
I was not here 6 or 7 years ago.
Mr. Chair, Delegate Weber, yes, sir.
All right, thank you, sir.
Delegate Lopez, did you get your question answered? No. Do you have a question? Oh, okay. Any other questions for Delegate Carlson from members of the committee? Okay, let's go to the audience. Is there anyone here to testify in favor of HB 1883? Why don't we start with you, Mr. Allman?
Mr. Chair, members of the subcommittee, Josephus Allman with the Southern Environmental Law Center. Really thank the patron for her leadership on this issue. I think, like we were discussing earlier, moving these solar projects to rooftops and previously developed project sites, I think that's something we can all agree on. And then I think we've got some important consumer protections here, as the delegate noted. And then you've got reliability and resilience benefits coming through the extension of the strategic undergrounding program. I think as we're seeing increasingly frequent and more intense storms, that reliability and resilience will be critical to maintain for the grid. Thank you, we support.
Walton Shepworth, NRDC, we agree with all that and we support this good bill. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Patrick Brigham with IBW Local 666. We support this bill.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Chrissy Noonan on behalf of Dominion Energy. We very much appreciate the patron working with us on this bill. It is a very complicated topic. We look forward to continuing to work with the patron. I think there are a few technical tweaks that we're still working through, but we would support the bill moving through the process and continuing the conversations with the patron and stakeholders.
Mr. Chair.
Delegate Weber.
Chrissy, a couple questions. So when I alluded to the strategic undergrounding earlier, does that, it would just extend the date so the program would work the same, correct? Where the undergrounding would then be part of the...
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Delegate Weber, the project, the pilot, as we're calling it, would remain the same. This would just allow us to do it for 4 more years, which is very relevant to Dominion as it's a keystone in our reliability.
One more question, Mr. Chair.
Delegate Weber.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
In regards to the power purchase agreements, when an individual homeowner is going to enter into a power purchase agreement, is there still an agreement on, say, attaching to the grid where there's basically an attachment fee that homeowner would pay so that they could help maintain the grid for the rest of the ratepayer?
Mr. Chair, Delegate Weber, I don't see that this language addresses that. I will say that as I read the language and understand it, what it does in reference to the PPAs is that it sort of flips the 65-35 script that we've all been working off over the last 5 years. And so for these really small projects, 3 megawatts and smaller, 65% of those would have to come from PPAs, whereas typically Dominion would be required to petition for the 65% on their own. This felt like a fair compromise for Dominion because utilities do things best at utility scale, and so allowing for PPAs for those smaller projects made sense to us in this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Delegate Weber. Good questions.
Mr. Chairman, Kyle Shreve, again with the Virginia Forestry Association. We support the bill and thank the patron. Solar that goes on rooftop and previously developed land leaves us to be able to conserve our working lands and forests. We appreciate it. Support the bill. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee, Matt Mansell, on behalf of Virginia LCV, we support this legislation.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Jim Purical from Advanced Energy United, we support this bill and thank the patron for her work.
Mr. Chair, members of the subcommittee, Lillian Anderson with Virginia Conservation Network, and we also support this bill and thank the patron for bringing it forward.
Mr. Chair, members of the subcommittee, Victoria Higgins, Chesapeake Climate Action Network Action Fund, we support the bill. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Bob Shippey, Sierra Club support.
Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to testify against 1883? Anyone online, Mr. Clerk?
No, sir.
Any further questions or comment from members of the panel? Delegate Carlson, you want the last word?
I would just ask for your support and thank you for the time to present and dealing with me as I juggle my schedule.
Thank you. Delegate Herring?
Mr. Chair, I move to report the substitute.
There is a motion to report the substitute properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, please open the roll. Please close the roll. The measure passes 9-1. Thank you, Delegate Carlson.
Thank you, Chair.
Delegate Shin, HB 2090. Where would you like to present from? That's fine. It's your choice. Sure.
Oh, maybe I'll go up.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm doing my colleagues a solid by not putting them on camera. Before you, you've got HB 2090, and this is a little bit confusing, and I ask for your patience. We did have a substitute prepared, but I'm going to actually ask that we not adopt that substitute, and I'm going to proceed in presenting the original bill as introduced, HB 2090. Oh, okay. And with the caveat that we are still working through some of the language on this and hope that, like in times past, we will be able to get to a place by Thursday that will help us get into a better position. But we are still working through some of this language, but I'd like to present what we've got. And for background, in 2020, the General Assembly established the Multifamily Shared Solar Program in order to give apartment residents access to renewable energy. It was actually a bill that was carried by a dear friend and former colleague, Delegate Mark Keem. And despite very broad support for this program, some of the details around it have made it really challenging for developers to finance and build projects under this program. And to date, no development has occurred under this multifamily program. There are a few things about the program as it currently exists that aren't working. For example, the on-site location requirement, but lots of multifamily buildings lack sufficient on-site space, either on roofs or surrounding land, to accommodate solar systems at a financially viable scale. There are on-site subscriber restrictions whereby only building residents can subscribe to the solar project, which significantly limits the pool of interested and eligible participants. The innate transient characteristic of residents in a multifamily building also makes it pretty difficult. And from a scaling perspective, smaller projects often increase costs. Multifamily building roofs are typically small and contain HVAC systems or other equipment that are difficult to relocate, which reduces viable development sites and limits options for renters. The goal of HB 2090 is to preserve the original intent of the bill and make minor changes to the program to expand the availability of it. And it would remove, in this original bill, it removes some of the on-site requirement and allowing developers to build projects that are within a certain radius of said building. And we hope that with this, it would increase clean energy options for residents in multifamily buildings and also to encourage development within their own communities. I'm going to stop there and ask if there are any questions, as I imagine there might be.
Thank you, Delegate Shin. Members of the committee, any questions for the delegate? Is there anyone in the audience here to testify in favor of HB 2090? There we go, spit spot.
Mr. Chair, members of the subcommittee, Josephus Solomon with the Southern Environmental Law Center. Want to thank the patron for bringing this bill. We litigated this case a couple years ago at the State Corporation Commission, and we're excited about it at the time. There's a $17 administrative charge that was set up in that proceeding, but as the delegate mentioned, with the locational requirement, there hasn't been any development in the program. So we think this is a really good step to expand access and make this a really great option for Virginians in multifamily housing. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Noonan.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Chrissy Noonan on behalf of Dominion Energy, and we do appreciate the patron working with us to listen to our concerns. We are much more comfortable with the introduced version than the substitute that was posted online earlier today. I think philosophically, for us, the multifamily shared solar program traditionally didn't have a minimum bill because the idea was you were generating on or adjacent to where you are utilizing. So there isn't the same need for folks who are part of this program paying for the infrastructure, the wires that all of us utilize every day. When we start growing the radius where people can qualify under this multifamily shared solar program, and sort of don't contemplate a minimum bill or an administrative cost, that's where we start to have heartburn. That cost would be passed on to other customers. So we would support this bill moving through the process, and we look forward to continuing to talk to the patron about it. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee, Matt Mansell, on behalf of Virginia LCV, recognizing there's still some more work to be done, Virginia LCV does support this bill.
Hi, Missy Wesolowski, representing Summit Ridge Energy, an Arlington-based shared solar company. We would like to thank the delegate for introducing the bill, and we look forward to working with everyone to have a great bill on Thursday.
Is there anyone here to testify in opposition to HB 2090? Any questions from the members of the panel for Delegate Shin? Delegate, last word? We operate by motion.
Move the report. Mr. Chair, I'm just speaking to the motion just briefly. I'm just a no right now just to flag it. So I don't know how everyone else is going to vote, but clearly you're working on it. So I just didn't want to get lost in the process.
Something tells me someone's going to flag it, but that's okay.
Oh, well, we're good.
Anyway,
thank you.
Is there a second? All right, we have a motion to report the substitute. It's a substitute, right? No, we're not reporting the substitute. Motion to report the bill as introduced, properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, please open the roll. Has everyone voted who wants to vote?
I'm going to, Mr. Chair.
Madam Delegate Herring, no, it's not closed.
Yes, it is.
Oh, it is?
But well, since we're still live streaming, if you want to make a vote, I can change.
I have a motion then.
Delegate Herring.
Well, do you need to announce it first? Yeah.
Okay, yes, the bill fails to report, 5-5.
Mr. Chair, I have a
Delegate
motion.
Herring.
Having voted on the prevailing side on which we bill to pass HB 2090, I move that we reconsider the vote.
Second.
Motion properly second to reconsider the result in HB 2090. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Let's reconsider the bill. Any further discussion on the bill? Mr. Clerk, please open the roll. Please close the roll. Bill reports 6-4. The last bill on the docket is mine, so I'll ask Delegate Herring to lead the discussion.
All right, Chair Sullivan,
Madam Chair, there is a substitute.
do I have a motion on the substitute? Been moved and properly seconded that we adopt the substitute. All in favor? Aye. Those opposed? The substitute is adopted by one vote. Chair Sullivan.
That's all I need. Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the panel, you all have seen this bill at one point or another, whether in another committee or on the floor. I've actually introduced it several times, and it's gotten better every year, and it's gotten more and more support, bipartisan support, I might add. Typically, we've stubbed our toes on the funding of it, but not on the merits of it. Last year, the bill passed our body by a vote of 72-24. This is a bill that has to do with electric vehicle infrastructure in rural parts of Virginia. And this bill, by the way, has nothing to do with how you might personally feel about electric vehicles. This bill is a reaction to what is happening out in the market. And the fact is more and more electric vehicles are both being purchased in Virginia and, importantly, with respect to this bill, coming into Virginia from other states. And by the way, I have one little bit of anecdotal evidence. Yesterday morning was the first time I got here to the General Assembly building and tried to park my EV, and all of the charging stations were taken up. So even here in the General Assembly, there are a growing number of people using EVs. But the point of this bill is to try to fill a huge gap in what's happening with electric vehicle infrastructure nationally, but particularly, of course, here in Virginia. The federal money that's being used to put infrastructure in around the country is focused particularly around the highways. In fact, it's limited to being around the interstate highways. And as a result, what you find is a lot of infrastructure going in urban and suburban and exurban areas and along highways in rural areas. But of course, we all know how big a state Virginia is. And that particular approach, while helpful, is not going to get EV infrastructure into huge parts of Virginia that don't happen to be in urban or near an interstate. This bill is an attempt to fix that. Now, why are we worried about this? I've been worried about this for a long time and talking about it for a long time. There are several reasons that we want to make sure that we're putting EV infrastructure in other parts of the states other than in urban and highway corridors. First, we want all Virginians themselves to be able to avail themselves of an electric vehicle should they so choose. But one of the things we're particularly interested in is making sure that people from other parts of the country, tourists who want to come to our beautiful state, who want to go hiking and skiing and fishing in our rural areas, which of course are becoming increasingly attractive as tourist destinations, that those individuals can be comfortable that they'll drive the cars that they own and be able to charge them. I was talking to someone just today about Smith Mountain Lake, which of course a wonderful tourist destination, but they need more EV infrastructure. They're finding that the folks coming to Smith Mountain Lake are struggling to charge their electric vehicles. Virginia itself, through the Department of Energy, recently announced a program that's sort of directed at this same thing, and Director Davis, in announcing this program, talked about, he said the following: by equipping our communities with these practical assets, we're not only attracting more visitors, but also supporting local residents and businesses. EV charging stations have the potential to boost revenue of nearby businesses by $1,500 annually, keeping Virginia competitive in the evolving tourism industry. Recently, all of you who I know read the RTD regularly saw a great op-ed from Eric Terry talking about how important having a fully formed EV infrastructure in all parts of Virginia, particularly in areas that are tourist attractions in the rural parts of Virginia, is important to the tourism industry in Virginia. So this bill does, as its name implies, it sets up an EV infrastructure fund. It would be a fund that would help private developers develop infrastructure for EVs in areas of the state that are rural, and there's definitions in there about how that is done to make sure that these are only going in areas that wouldn't otherwise either get federal money or otherwise have lots of infrastructure in them already. So it's directed at distressed areas. It's also directed at areas with lower populations so that we make sure they go in the right places. So that's what the bill does, Madam Chair. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yes, Delegate Weber.
Thank you. All right, so Delegate Sullivan, in the bill, it talks about a private developer shall be eligible to apply for a grant in an amount up to 70% of the private developer's non-utility costs. With current costs, what kind of dollar amount are we looking at that developer would then be taking from the fund to utilize?
What is that? The question is, what does it cost to build a?
What does it cost, and what does it cost to build an average charging station?
I think we've got some people in the room who might be able to answer that question. I've never built one. I don't know, so I'm not in a position to tell you exactly. And how many this would build is going to depend on how I do in the Appropriations Committee.
Okay, that was
so I can't answer that next question you were going to ask.
Yeah, Madam Chair.
Yes.
So this fund is going to be mostly Virginia tax dollars as opposed to federal monies flowing down, or can this fund also accept the federal monies that come down for the industry?
I've actually had conversations with Director Davis. We're exploring that.
Where's Davis? We can yell at him. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Right. Any other questions? Well, I have one. So this is for private developers. It's not the state. It's not like a state fund that will. You understand what I'm saying? Probably not. It's the fund is not. It's not money going to localities. It's going to.
This would be a fund of state money to which developers would apply. It's not going to localities. It would be going to developers.
So, Madam Chair.
Yes.
May I ask? So, to kind of piggyback off of the chair, as a developer, I'm going to develop a $250,000, $500,000 charging station in Washington, Virginia, in Rappahannock, county of 9,000 people. I would, as a developer, would apply to this grant, and I would get 70% of my construction costs from the grant in order to build there.
I think the language is, Madam Chair, I think the language is up to.
Up to.
So as the department is deciding who to give money to, it's not always. It doesn't require that it be 70%.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions? All right. Those who are wishing to speak in support of this bill, please come forward.
Madam Chair, Madam Chair, Rob Bohannon, representing the Smith Mountain Lake Chamber of Commerce. This issue comes up a lot in our discussions as far as, again, like Delegate Sullivan said, no matter what your position is on electric vehicles, more and more people are coming to that area who have electric vehicles, who want charging infrastructure. Ours is an area that is not on the interstate, not on the highway, is not able to get those federal funds where a lot of those charging stations are going. So this is a perennial topic that comes up. Would love to see something like this move forward.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, Abigail Thompson with Gentry Lock on behalf of Advanced Energy United and Carbon Solutions Group, and we support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, Tommy Herbert, representing the Virginia Restaurant, Lodging, and Travel Association. We want to thank the patron for bringing the bill. We just want to note that visitors in Virginia spend $91 million a day, and they spent $33.3 billion over the course of 2023. That is also a part of the great development that we are seeing in western, southern, and southwestern Virginia in tourism in sectors that are as diverse as extreme sports, rails to trails, cultural things like the Crooked Road. This would help folks from not Virginia be able to access those great tourist attractions. I just want to note really quickly that the market share for electric vehicles in our surrounding jurisdictions continues to rise, as well as it rising in Virginia. And so we think that this would make a great impact in making sure that folks are able to access, and by the way, because of the mechanics of chargers, stay on site longer at some of Virginia's less visited rural attractions. We hope that you will see fit to report the bill. Thank you.
Madam Chair, Keith Martin with Appalachian Power. We're also in support of the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, those who are opposed? All right, is there anyone online? All right.
Madam Chair?
Yes. Delegate?
Yes, I'd like
King,
to
Wendy.
speak to the bill and then a motion at the appropriate time,
Sure.
but I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Should this bill move forward favorably, does it need to go to appropriations?
Yes, it does.
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
It does.
May I speak to the bill?
Yes,
Well,
Monday.
first, I want to thank the patron for bringing this forward and bringing together people from such different areas of business and tourism and industry in support of this bill. I think that EVs are real. The infrastructure is needed. And I thank you for creating something that would put that in places where people need the infrastructure and they're often forgotten. So thank you for thinking of rural and other communities in this initiative. And with that, I move to report and refer this to appropriations. With a substitute.
So it's been moved and properly second that HB 1791 substitute be reported and referred to appropriations. All wishing to vote, please do so on the electronic voting board. And the bill reports 6-4. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you all. 5:45, not so bad for sub 3. Let me just reiterate what I said at the beginning of the meeting. If you weren't here, we have 2 meetings left. We have more bills than I know. So right now, I've been told there are a lot of bills coming. So we got our work cut out for us. But we'll see y'all on Thursday afternoon, and we'll blow through a lot of bills. We're adjourned. Thank you.